there, guys, and welcome back to another video with Past Papers 101 with Miss Edwards. Today we have the 2025 May-June paper 2 for the human and social biology exam. At the time of this recording, this exam was just done 2 days ago. And if you are here to prepare for your exam, well, you're in the right place. So for those who would have just sat this exam, let's look at the answers. How was the exam for you? Let's see if you can give yourself a mark or a grade based on the answers I'm going to be providing in this video. And hopefully you would have done your best. All right. So this paper consists of 6 questions in 2 sections. You are required to answer all the questions, and you should have been writing the answers in the space provided. So let's revisit the paper. Okay. Section A. Answer all questions. Question 1. Define each of the following terms according to the World Health Organization. Health and disease. And both these questions were worth 2 marks. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity, while disease is any deviation from the normal structural or functional state of an organism. Now, these definitions are according to the World Health Organization. So, if it was not word for word, you would still probably get a mark or so, but it has to be according to the WHO for you to get the full 2 marks. But I guess, guys, based on your understanding of health and disease, you would score your 2 marks. It says state 2 causes of non-communicable diseases. And remember, these are the ones that cannot be passed on or transferred from one person to the next. So they cannot be passed on. So 1, physical inactivity. 2, unhealthy diets, and I gave you an extra 1, harmful use of alcohol and drugs. Now, there are others, but you would have to do your research to see if the answer you would have placed there is suitable. But these are the top 3 causes of non-communicable diseases, and those would be worth 2 marks. So good, so far so good. All right. Part C of the question says, long COVID occurs where patients continue to experience the effects of COVID-19 for extended periods after recovery. Figure 1 shows the signs and symptoms of long COVID and its prevalence in patients. So this is the graph they gave. They have the percentage of patients with signs and symptoms on the vertical axis and signs and symptoms on the horizontal axis. Now it asks you from the graph in figure 1, identify 2 signs and 2 symptoms that patients with long COVID experience. Now the signs would be cough, diarrhea, vomiting, and headache. I just threw in headache there because if you do your research, in some researches, it says headache is a sign because you can see the person's pain, the way how they react to the pain of the headache. But that one would be your last option. But cough, diarrhea, and vomiting would be the main answers. Symptoms: abdominal pain, fatigue, fever, and also headache. But headache would also be that one in the gray area. So the other 3, abdominal pain, fatigue, and fever, would be the symptoms. Remember, signs are what we can actually see, while symptoms are what is felt by the person in going through the illness. All right, so signs another person can identify, but the symptom is only felt by the sick person. 2, it says identify the most common sign or symptom that long COVID patients experience. And I think this one was a giveaway. Fatigue, right? That would be the one that most which is the most common sign. And it says identify the least common sign or symptom of long COVID. And if you look at the 3 lowest ones there, you could see that abdominal pain is the lowest one. right? It's still lower than diarrhea and vomiting. So that would be 1 mark. The next part of the question says, it is reported that some persons who are affected by long COVID may experience signs and symptoms for up to 2 years. Suggests 2 ways in which long-term fatigue in individuals affected by long COVID could impact the community, and 1 way it could impact the economy. So I have here, in the community, you'd have social disruption. Remember, if you are fatigued, more than likely you would not be able to attend school. The children in the community would not be able to attend school, and this would lead to a loss of learning. So that is what fatigue could cause in the community. And also social distancing too. Remember, if you are fatigued, you're not going to want to interact with other persons, so it could be causing a disruption in the person's social life, and those would be for the community. And then economy, you're going to have reduced productivity. So persons who have this COVID, if they are fatigued, they're not going to be able to do their jobs properly. This could cause them to become unemployed, and then this large scale of unemployment could affect the amount of money generated by the workforce. All right, so those would be the causes, or sorry, those would be the impacts of for long-term fatigue now from this long COVID on the economy. So, and also it would increase the cost of healthcare, because if persons are fatigued, they're going to need medication, right? And then this could incur a cost to their families and also the government, who is responsible for the health sector. So if you spoke about any way it could have affected persons in their community or the economy relating to the cost and the money, then you would be able to secure your 3 marks. Your answer would not have had to be as written as mine, or so many words, but once you would have been able to express yourself, you should be good. Your answer should be fine. All right, and that was the first question, worth 15 marks. In my opinion, it was an easy question. So let's look at this one now. So we see a topic here, reproduction. So let's go. Figure 2 shows processes S and T which occur in the female reproductive system. Figure 2, part of the female reproductive system. And they asked us to state the process happening at S. Now, by looking at S, the first thing that should be coming to your mind is the release of the egg from the ovary. And that process would be ovulation. So hopefully everybody got that one right. If you didn't get it right, that's fine. It's only 1 mark. The next part of the question says, state the day of the menstrual cycle in which the process identified in A typically occurs. And this was day 14. Remember, menstrual cycle is a 28-day cycle, and around day 14 is when we have ovulation happening, or the release of the egg from the ovary. Third part of the question says, describe the process that is occurring at the region labeled T. Now, I want you to look at the diagram. If this is coming back to you now from the exam, you should have been thinking about the uterus there, right? That's where the process labeled T is occurring. And so that process is implantation. And what's happening is that the embryo is embedding itself into the wall of the uterus, where it will develop into a fetus. So this is after fertilization. So once the sperm meets the egg in the fallopian tube right here, remember, this fertilized egg now is going to develop and go through a lot of cell division until it reaches the uterus, where it will embed itself in the wall of the uterus, and that is when the person becomes pregnant. All right, the pregnancy has begun, and that would have been 2 marks. Now we have these diagrams. Hopefully this was a breeze for those who would have done this exam, and for those who are studying for their exam, hopefully your memory is sharp to remember these from your classes. Now, figure 3 shows 3 stages labeled X, Y, and Z, which occur during the process of childbirth. The stages are not in the correct order, so they would have rearranged them to be in the wrong position. So the question asked you to place the stages in the correct order. Now, even if, right, this was not something you studied, or you don't think you had memory of the birthing process, just by looking at the images should be giving you a hint of what's happening. So we have stages X, Y, and Z. So let's look at them. The correct order or the answer would be stage Y, then Z or Z, and then X. So that would be the correct order, Y, Z, X. And that would give you 2 marks. Not sure how CXE would allocate these 2 marks because it's 3 um steps. So I don't know if you had the first 2 in the correct order. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But that would have been for 2 marks. Second part of the question says, briefly explain what occurs during the second stage of childbirth. So let's look back at stage Z, which is the one here at the bottom. It's asking what is happening in the second stage, right? So in the second stage is what we call pushing and birth. And in this stage, it starts once the cervix is fully dilated and continues until the baby is born. Contractions will continue, helping to push the baby down through the birth canal. So once you would have spoken about the cervix being open and baby being pushed out, you would have gotten some marks there. And if you know that stage Z was the second stage, all right? It says, name the hormone which is released throughout the duration of childbirth. The answer would be oxytocin. If you didn't remember that one, no problem. That's just 1 mark. It says, explain how the named hormone in B facilitates the process of childbirth. So during labor, the pressure of the baby against the cervix will stimulate the release of oxytocin from the mother's pituitary gland. And then this oxytocin will travel to the uterus and stimulate the muscles in the uterus now to contract. So it tightens, right? Helping to thin out the wall of the cervix and move the baby down the birthing canal. It's almost kind of like how peristalsis works when food is being moved through your digestive tract, right? It's the same kind of process to help to push the baby out. Oxytocin levels will increase continuously for the birth. So even if your answer isn't as wordy as mine or wasn't as wordy as mine, right? All you need to remember is that oxytocin is going to be released from the pituitary and it's going to help now with these contractions to help to birth the baby, all right? And you should get some marks. It says identify one component of the afterbirth, right? And remember, the afterbirth is basically the second thing after the baby is out of the vaginal canal. Then the mother will have to give birth, in a sense, to the afterbirth. So whatever is there will have to come out after the baby is born. And some of the things that would be a part of the afterbirth would be the placenta, pieces of the umbilical cord, the amniotic sac, or the amnion, right? And that would give you 1 mark. And I just give you most of, and blood and tissues, I'm not sure if they would give you the mark for blood, but it is a part of the afterbirth. So if you put blood there, I'm not sure, but keep your fingers crossed for that 1 mark. So that's 15 marks. Now we're on to question 3, so we're moving along smoothly. And I think this was the hardest question, in my opinion, for those who may not have studied in depth the genetics part, all right? So let's see. It says identify the number of sets of chromosomes contained in a haploid human cell and a diploid human cell. Now, this is tricky for those who didn't read the question because it asks you for the number of sets of chromosomes. So in haploid, it's 1 set, 23 chromosomes, and diploid, 2 sets, 46 chromosomes. Now, hopefully, you should, if you didn't write this set, we're just saying hopefully CXC will give you the mark for 23 chromosomes and 46 chromosomes, but the question really asks for the number of sets. So unless they are they're going to stick, to the exact thing that they're looking for. If you put the number of chromosomes, I would give you the mark because it shows that you understand the concept. All right. Now, B says state the term which characterizes each of the following definitions in the table below. So I says a very long molecule of DNA that contains the genetic material of the cell, that would be a chromosome, and two short sections of DNA that contain the information for a particular trait would be genes or a gene. Right? And that would give you your 2 marks. Next part of the question says toxins are drugs that inhibit mitosis by preventing the movement of chromatids in the cell. And remember, mitosis, they're asking you for the definition. Let's see how many persons remember the definition. It is a type of cell division where a single somatic cell, or basically body cell, divides into 2 identical daughter cells, right? That's mitosis. It says identify 2 stages of mitosis that will not occur as a result of the action of toxins. Remember, toxins inhibit mitosis by preventing the movement of the chromatids. So you need to know which 2 stages of mitosis will have the chromatids moving. And the 2 main stages that would have movement in the chromatids would be anaphase and telophase. All right. So if you had one of those or you had both of those should be your answers. Part 3 says suggest one process that will not occur in the body as a result of the action of toxins. So remember, if toxins prevent mitosis from happening, then growth would be affected and or repair of tissues and worn out cells. Those would be your answers, right? So that would be the process affected if toxins are working. Hopefully you got that 1 mark. But again, it's 1 mark. So if you didn't answer that question or that part of the question correctly, don't worry, it's 1 mark. Next part of the question, I think this pedigree chart would have disturbed some persons in the exam, but hopefully we would have made the right decisions and read the question. So it says figure 4 shows a sickle cell pedigree. Each individual in the pedigree is labeled 1 to 10. We have the parents who are 1 to 2, the first generation 3 to 7, and the second generation 8 to 10. We have on the side in this diagram, right, it might not be showing clearly in the recording, but the square box at the top is male and then the circle is female. They are unshaded. And then the 2 shapes at the bottom, which says this diseased male in the square and diseased female, are shaded. So they appear shaded and unshaded in the pedigree chart. Now, based on I've seen the physical copy of the paper, but for some reason it just did not transfigure onto the scanned copy. So let me just hopefully see if you can remember which ones were shaded and which ones were not. 5 and 6 were shaded and 8. Right, 5, 6, and 8 were shaded on the paper. So let's see. It says the 2 individuals in the first generation so it's asking you to identify the 2 individuals in the first generation who are carriers of the sickle cell trait and justify your response. So the first generation has 4, 5, 6, and 7 being children or offspring from the parents numbers 1 and 2. Now, let me give you the appearance of each shape. 4 is unshaded, 5 is shaded, 6 is shaded, and 7 is unshaded. Remember, shaded means that person has the disease sickle cell. Unshaded means the person does not have the disease. All right, it's just a regular person. Now it asks us who are the carriers for the trait in the first generation. So we're looking at those children 4 to 7 from the parents 1 to 2. So the individuals who would be carriers would be number 4 and number 7, while their siblings 5 and 6 have the disease. So it asks us who are the carriers would be 4 and 7 Those who have the disease would be 5 and 6. The reason is that their parents are both heterozygous recessive or carriers. So they would not have the disease, so the boxes were not shaded, but they are carriers of the trait. And as they were able to pass on the sickle cell trait without having the disease, that is what would have shown us our answer. All right. So 4 and 7 are carriers, while 5 and 6 have the disease. I don't think I can make it any clearer. You would have to understand the whole point of genetics to work with the term heterozygous and all of that. So if this is just not one of the topics that you got to study or you were well versed and this was your answer, you're good to go. Part 2 says one individual in the parental generation who has the heterozygous genotype H capital A H S, and it would be parents 1 and or 2. Both parents would have been heterozygous. And heterozygous just means that they have two different alleles. All right. So one would be normal, one would have the sickle cell trait. And so either parent, if you had 1 or 2, that would have been your answer. And that's 1 mark. Part 3 says one individual in the first generation, who has the homozygous recessive genotype HSHS, and that would be either individual 5 or 6 because they have the disease. So homozygous would mean they have the same allele for the trait. So people, and this question is on this part of the question is only worth 4, 5, 6 marks. And I guess you could get away with the 1 mark for part 2 and 3. It would just be for those who don't have maybe the full understanding. Maybe that 4 mark question would have baffled you, but that is the answer there. Hopefully, I have explained it where you are comfortable and competent now. All right, question 4, because we're winding down slowly. And if at this point you have not subscribed to the channel and you have not liked it and you have not shared it with your classmates or your teachers or other persons in your contacts, please do so that they can be well prepared for their exam if they're studying, or they can review the paper if they have done this exam already. So question 4, it says figure 5 shows a waste disposal method used throughout the Caribbean, and this is the waste disposal method. It says using figure 5, identify the type of waste disposal method shown, and the answer would be a landfill or a sanitary landfill. But if you had landfill, I think you would get it. A sanitary landfill. Part 2 says state the role of each of the following components. The gas vent. Now, the role of the gas vent is that it helps to prevent pressure buildup within the landfill, which could lead to explosions. So the vents help to aerate the waste, potentially affecting the rate of decomposition and methane production. Basically, it means whatever trapped gases are in the landfill from the garbage, it has a way of escape, so it doesn't build up and cause an explosion. Hopefully that was something along the lines of what you wrote. And then the liner actually prevents the leachate and other pollutants from seeping into the soil and groundwater, which could otherwise contaminate your drinking water sources and your ecosystem. All right, so the leachate is there at the bottom, and the liner is just like a plastic material that helps to prevent the leachate from getting into your soil or your water. Part 3 says state 2 reasons for compacting and or covering the refuse. And the refuse there just means rubbish or garbage. It says it would be covering helps to contain the odors from the decaying waste and prevents pests like rodents, right? So if you had anything like that, good. And compacting also helps to reduce the volume of waste, and it allows for the landfill to store more waste in the same amount of space. So anything along those lines, then you get your 2 marks. Part B says, name one method of improper domestic waste disposal used throughout the Caribbean. And the answer there would be open dumping or burning. Simple, 1 mark. And then it says, suggest 3 diseases that can be transmitted by vectors as a result of the improper disposal of domestic waste. And the vectors there are just any insect animals that can carry diseases. So the answers there would be leptospirosis, which is transmitted by rats, malaria and dengue, transmitted by mosquitoes, right? And that would be 3 marks. So any 3 at all. And then it says stage 3 other environmental or health hazards that may result from the improper disposal of waste. You could have water pollution, climate change, air pollution, global warming. I have cholera and cancer there as 2 other diseases. So any 3 environment or health hazard would give you your 3 marks. And I think all the students would have gotten those 3 marks. Am I right? Yeah, everybody should have gotten those 3 marks. I have faith in you. Part C says recommend 3 ways in which citizens could reduce the amount of solid waste that requires disposal. And the 3 things that should come back to your mind is reduce, right? Use only what you need, reuse using items more than once, and recycle using waste to make useful new items. And if you would have thought along the lines, because it just came to me as I was reading the question, if there are 3 ways in which you could reduce it, and you would have just broken down the step reduce from the 3 R's into 3 things, then that's fine. Recommending just means that you are going to produce less waste, right? Reduce the amount of solid waste. So reduce, reuse, and recycle should have been your go-to. And if you just gave any suggestions at all, you would have gotten your 3 marks, or you should have. So that's totally 15 marks there. And I think that was an easy question. So we are at section B. Questions 5 and 6 are left. Hopefully, so far, so good. Your answers that you'd have put on the paper look somewhat similar to these that I am giving you. So let's see. I think this was also one of the challenging questions, the CPR question. But let's see. Part 5 or question 5. A woman screams for help at a restaurant because her husband has suddenly fallen to the floor. He is not breathing and is unconscious. Vincent, who has CPR training, shouts for the waiter to call the ambulance while turning the man onto his back on the floor. List the next 4 steps in cardiopulmonary resuscitation or CPR that Vincent should use to assist the husband. And it says list the next 4 steps. So because he would have already shouted for help and he would have turned the gentleman over on his back, the next thing he should do is open the airway, right? To make sure that it is clear. 2, check to see if the husband is breathing. 3, begin chest compressions. And 4, give rescue breaths. And that would be the 4 steps next in the order. If you didn't get the 4, if you had 1 or 2, well, maybe you would have gotten some marks. But don't stress that. Part 2, state the 2 benefits of using a disposable device when applying mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. 1, it prevents transmission of diseases, right? And all that mouth device is, instead of you putting your mouth onto the person's mouth, you have a device that connects both your mouths together so you can help the person to get the rescue breaths, right? And to start breathing again. The second benefit is the hygiene, right? It helps to ensure a clean environment for the patient. 3, mouthpiece can help to create an airtight seal, ensuring that the rescuer's breaths effectively inflate the patient's lungs. So, if it was just the mouth on the mouth, then there probably would not have been a tight enough seal, so air would be escaping that could have been helping to get the person breathing again. So those would be 3 possible reasons. And I think, guys, you would have come up, or you're coming up, sorry, with the correct or the most appropriate response. B, it says Amy is a college student who uses marijuana to maintain a good mood and to help her to focus on her studies. Explain to Amy why the use of marijuana will not help her to maintain a good mood or to achieve academic success. So, marijuana, especially regular use, will not help Amy to maintain a good mood and has been linked to an increased risk of developing depression and anxiety disorders. So, that's one. Marijuana can also impair memory, making it difficult to concentrate and remember information. So it would not help her to be a better student. Smoking marijuana can also damage the lungs potentially and lead to bronchitis and other respiratory illnesses or problems. So overall, marijuana will cause more harm than good for Amy. If you would have described anything along those lines and you would have just listed negatives, then you should be getting your 5 marks, people. And every one of us in the Caribbean, we know someone in our community who uses marijuana, so we can use that person as our example, right? The hookah is a water pipe used to smoke flavored or sweetened tobacco. Hookah smoking usually occurs in groups where the same mouthpiece is passed from one user to another. Some individuals believe that this practice is a safer method of using tobacco as compared to smoking cigarettes. So it says suggest 4 reasons why the hookah use is just as or more harmful than smoking cigarettes. Now, hookah smoke has high levels of harmful chemicals. In fact, hookah smokers are exposed to more carbon monoxide and smoke than cigarette smokers. 2, hookah could cause transmission of diseases as the mouthpiece is being shared amongst other persons. 3, longer exposure to smoke during a hookah session than with smoking a single cigarette. And 4, the hookah doesn't have a filter, which leads to deeper inhales than a single cigarette. So if you had anything along these lines, you should have gotten your 4 full marks. And we are at the final question on the paper, which is question 6. And we have this lovely diagram here. And the first question asks us to look at figure 6 and to state the type of pyramid which it is or it represents. And the answer is a pyramid of energy. Part 2 says identify one carnivore and one herbivore. The carnivore there would either be the reef shark or the bluefin tuna, and the herbivores would either be the Atlantic blue tang, the queen conch, or the zooplankton. All right, and those would be 2 marks. Part 3 says identify one producer. The producer would either be the phytoplankton, seagrass, or algae. Part 4, explain why producers are essential for the success of the ecosystem. The producers are the only organisms that are able to make their own food in any ecosystem. This makes them the primary energy source. That's 2 marks. Part B, explain what the pyramid shape in figure 6 says about the energy available at each successive trophic level. And remember, this would have been grade 10. This entire topic is a grade 10 topic. Only about 10% or fourth form topic. Only about 10% of the energy at one trophic level is transferred to the next. The rest is lost as heat to the environment or used for metabolic processes. This accounts for the shape of the pyramid, with every level being successively smaller as the diagram goes up, or it, goes up vertically or increases vertically. So we can see that there is way more energy, 1 million calories, then 10,000 calories, then 1,000, then 100, all the way up. So we know that it is a pyramid of energy. Part C says define the term bioaccumulation. And bioaccumulation is the process by which toxins build up in an organism's body faster than it can expel or get rid of. That's 2 marks. And the last part of the question, the marine ecosystem in figure 6 is contaminated by heavy metals from a nearby industry. Identify the organism in figure 6 which would have the greatest concentration of heavy metals and discuss the risk of its consumption to human health. So the organism with the greatest heavy metal contamination would be the reef shark. And this is caused by biomagnification, which is different from bioaccumulation. The biomagnification is when the toxins increase as they move up the food chain. Humans, which are apex predators, so they become affected when they consume the contaminated organisms that have a buildup of toxins. This could lead to cancers, reproductive issues, liver and kidney diseases, as well as developmental delay. And that would be 4 marks. That's the end of the test. That was the end of the May-June 2025 Human and Social Biology paper 2. If you would have done this paper, I pray that the answers that I would have given would have been somewhat along the lines as what you put on the exam. And if you're studying for your exam, which has not yet come, I pray that these answers will help you in preparation for such exam. Please like and share the video, send to your friends who you know would have done the exam or who are prospective um examine examies who will want to do the paper. So we pray that you would have gotten the desired grade from doing this paper. All the best. Remember, this is Past Papers 101 with Miss Edwards, where we believe that with God all results can be